Lethal Weapon 5 is just another tale in a long series of 80s franchise reboots. The Lethal Weapon revival can learn a lot from its predecessors. For Hollywood hitmakers, 80s nostalgia appears to be the gift that keeps on coming. Will this movie break the racist Asian caricatures of Lethal Weapon 4? Let's find out. The trend started in 2013 when the 80s set sitcom The Goldbergs painted a rosy picture of Ronald Reagan and Margaret Thatcher's era. Stranger Things, Netflix's mega hit, quickly followed, as did a never-ending stream of multiplex arrivals that resurrected, reimagined, and revived dormant titles from the decade. If there was any doubt about the longevity of 80s nostalgia, Top Gun Maverick's historic box office performance proved that the trend was still going strong in 2023. As a result, Lethal Weapon launched a television spin-off in 2016 and made the duo's pranks a little more family-friendly, starring Damon Wayans as Murtaugh and Clayne Crawford as Riggs, before Lethal Weapon replaced Crawford in its final season. There were just as many vehicle chases and shootouts, but Riggs and Murtaugh were no longer cursed. Much of the horrible gore featured in the early original films had vanished, and the tone had lightened considerably. As a result, the Lethal Weapon TV series only ran for 3 seasons and got mostly negative reviews from critics. Lethal Weapon 5 can still learn a few things from the unsuccessful spin-off. Although the Lethal Weapon franchise is as old as its understated hero, Roger Murtaugh, it still stands strong. Lethal Weapon 5 will now be directed by Mel Gibson, rather than the late great Richard Donner. While Gibson's directing track record is certainly remarkable, the actor's history of public intimations, homophobia, racism, and anti-Semitism may jeopardize the sequel's possibilities. According to Mel Gibson, production on the 5th and final Lethal Weapon picture will begin in 2023, with the actor directing and reprising his role as Martin Riggs. It remains to be seen whether this will ever happen, but it would not be the first unexpected resuscitation of the buddy cop genre. Lethal Weapon 5 does, however, have the benefit of hindsight working in its favor. Lethal Weapon 5 will not be the first belated sequel to an 80s property, nor will it be the second, third, or fourth resuscitation of an 80s R-rated action thriller franchise. This provides Lethal Weapon 5 with a wealth of experience to draw on and pitfalls to avoid, beginning with Terminator Dark Fate's issues. The reunion of original Terminator series stars Linda Hamilton and Arnold Schwarzenegger in this box office fiasco was not enough to save the sequel from critical and commercial catastrophe. The failure of Terminator Dark Fate demonstrated that simply resurrecting the original actors is insufficient. In a belated sequel set in a different time frame, Hamilton and Schwarzenegger played fresh versions of their previous characters. As a result, the film never regained the tone that made Terminator 2 Judgment Day so memorable. Of course, as a buddy cop comedy, Lethal Weapon 5 is unlikely to usher in a new era for the series. However, Gibson's controversial Dragged Across Concrete demonstrated that he has no problem glorifying abusive, corrupt cops, implying that Lethal Weapon 5 risks redefining the franchise's protagonists as completely different people. While Terminator Dark Fate made several poor creative decisions, the Terminator franchise sequel did nail one crucial feature that Terminator 7 should retain. Fans had anticipated a Terminator franchise rebirth before the 2019 release of Terminator Dark Fate. Terminator Dark Fate, another attempt to reboot the Terminator series' complex timeline, killed off John Connor, introduced new Terminator models, and generally repeated multiple faults that previous attempted franchise reboots had already executed. While the premise of Terminator 7 requires a more stripped-down storyline than its predecessors, there is one feature that any future Terminator sequel should steal from Terminator Dark Fate. What do you think, guys? Will Terminator 7 be able to break all previous records? I think yes. Let me know your view in the comment section. Coming back to the topic, The Terminator was a nasty, hard R sci-fi horror featuring a spate of bloody deaths in 1984, and even its lighter, more action-oriented first sequel retained this adults-only rating to allow for shocking gloom and gore. Later Terminator films, however, eliminated the R rating in an attempt to extend the franchise's appeal. Moving with Rambo, Rambo Last Blood, a sequel with so little tact that Rambo's creator was outraged by the franchise addition, can teach Lethal Weapon 5 a lot. Lethal Weapon 5, like other cop thrillers, will most likely revolve around its anti-heroes following a group of crooks. However, the sequel should think about the politics of its plot, especially after the cringeworthy racist Asian caricatures of Lethal Weapon 4. The last thing the sequel needs is a plot involving nasty Mexican villains trafficking innocent civilian ladies, a la Rambo Last Blood, whose plot was xenophobic enough to enrage a slew of critics upon its initial release. Before proceeding, please remember to like and subscribe to the channel for future updates. Returning to the subject, the storyline for Rambo Last Blood was written in 2009, years before the US-Mexico border became a national problem and a symbol of political divisiveness. It's not a surprise that this happened less than a year after Taken, the narrative of an old American veteran eradicating unscrupulous international human traffickers to save an innocent female civilian. However, given that the premise of Lethal Weapon 2 addressed South African apartheid in words that have aged surprisingly well in the decades following, it is not unreasonable to expect Lethal Weapon 5 to avoid Rambo Last Blood's tone-deaf plot. While it will be reasonably easy to avoid Lethal Weapon 5 becoming a reactionary fantasy like Rambo Last Blood, avoiding Terminator Dark Fate's subtle, destructive reimagining of the franchise's key characters will be more difficult. However, The Predator exemplifies the most difficult trap for the belated action thriller sequel to avoid. The Predator was full of moves and quips, but lacked heart and character. With a strong script and excellent direction from Shane Black, the famed screenwriter of Lethal Weapon, it's difficult to see where this one went wrong. As a result, it's difficult to say what Lethal Weapon 5 must avoid. At this point, the only way to save the Die Hard franchise would be to kill John McClane to bring some reality back into the cartoony universe of the franchise. Despite how ridiculous some of the action in the later sequels is, the Lethal Weapon series has yet to succumb to this problem. As a result, Lethal Weapon 5 must circumvent this issue by making Riggs and Murtaugh not entirely invulnerable. Unfortunately, the Lethal Weapon series actors are 76 and 67 respectively, which means they won't be able to get away with as much in Lethal Weapon 5 as they did in the first film. As the video comes to an end, guys, tell me your favorite part of the Lethal Weapon franchise. I chose part 2, so let me know your view in the comment section. Thanks for watching the video, and we'll see you at the next one.